Amory doesn't need another set of hands. Datan is very curious about Vulcan. And Omag needs more napkins. Hello, everybody, and welcome to The Seventh Rule with Sirach Lofton.
Hello, hello.
My name is Ryan T. Husk, and today we are doing a review of Star Trek The Next Generation, Season 5, Episode 8, Unification Part 2, story by Rick Berman and Michael Piller, teleplay by Michael Piller, directed by Cliff Bowl. This was November 9th, 1991. Where were you? How you doing today, Sirach?
Doing great. November 9th, 1991.
Looks like it's a beautiful day, everybody. Sirach, if you can't see what's going on, Sirach is hanging out at a beautiful park. It's still technically winter here in LA, but it feels like spring. He's got his sunglasses on. Not a cloud in the sky.
Yeah.
That's looking good.
It's beautiful outside, and I thought I'd just get the head start on the day, be outside, kind of plan my day out. But yeah, it's a very beautiful day. I'm out here in the valley in your neck of the woods.
Love it. It's a long neck. The valley is a big neck.
Yeah, it's a big neck. Yeah.
Everybody, make sure you like this video, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell icon for notifications. If you're listening in, give us a 5-star rating and a nice review. We'd really appreciate it. And go visit us on patreon.com/the7th rule to be part of this fun podcast. All right. So, Sirach, we already saw Unification Part 1. This is Unification Part 2. My first question to you is, this is something that always confused me way back in the day. Why was it not called, and I thought it was called for the longest time, reunification? They always kept saying in the episode, reunification. They never once used the word unification. So why was the episode called Unification?
Yeah, that got me with that one.
That's confusing to me.
They did keep referring to it as reunification. Obviously, they've been unified at one point in the past, and so it would be a reunification. That's interesting. I never thought of it like that. The title of it, I was more so just really impressed by the story concept.
Yeah.
And some of the language in the episode, which really highlights Michael Piller's abilities to me. I like the language. There's certain ways in which he tells stories that I feel is in the prototype or archetype of Star Trek science fiction storytelling. There's little callbacks, for example, like the whole cowboy diplomacy being used as a tagline in the beginning and then being brought back again at the end. That's kind of like one of the Star Trek traditions, to kind of throw something out there early and then see it manifest and have it come back as like, I thought I told you about that, and it just comes and finds itself back again. So that's just good writing to me. I really enjoyed the writing of both of these episodes. It brings a Spock. It gets him with Picard. It brings Denise Crosby in there, who I thought did a fantastic job playing the villain and holding her own against those two, iconic legends of the franchise.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, it's just had everything I think you could want. Damn near feature film worthy if it had a little bit more at stake. Let's say it could be a feature film.
Toss in a ship battle or two for the ship heads. Here's something. So at the end of the episode, I was thinking, this is something that I'm sure is a concept around the world. Almost every kind of story on Star Trek is borrowed or influenced by something. And I was trying to think, like, throughout history, what are, countries or peoples that had been broken apart and either reunified or just always wanted to reunify. And, obviously I'm thinking about a lot of things throughout history. like the Balkans. The Balkans are a mess in the nicest way possible.
Yeah,
And
Germany.
exactly. So, but what I landed on was Germany, East Germany and West Germany. And I was like, well, hang on, maybe that's exactly it. Because this came out in 1991, and East and West Germany, the Berlin Wall crumbled at the end of 89. And so this episode was probably written or conceptualized in 1990 and then came to fruition in 91. I wouldn't be surprised if that was the actual inspiration. So then I looked it up. I said, what was the exact date? And this was just where it got really fun, was that the date the Berlin Wall crumbled in late 1989 was actually November 9th. And this episode aired on November 9th, 1991, exactly on the 2-year anniversary. How cool is that?
That is super cool. Wow. I'm glad you did that research because that's an interesting little factoid there.
Yeah.
Obviously, Germany is one of those reunification type of things that we've seen in the history books. Um, but yeah, I thought the story was well written. It takes something that, like you just described, the current event kind of topic, another Star Trek way of storytelling, to take something from the headlines, reconstruct it, and put it into the future with alien races and science fiction as the backdrop. And so I think this episode had a lot of that. It also made me realize something that I don't think I really paid attention to before, as far as the art of storytelling with Star Trek, and that is watching this episode and the B story with with Riker made me think of John Wayne. You know,
he had his own
right?
kind of cowboy
Yeah,
diplomacy too, huh? Yeah.
yeah, yeah. He walks into the bar. You know, he does the John Wayne thing, and then it made me think about, in general, the whole connection between Star Trek and westerns, right? Because they did mention Wagon Train to the Stars, so
Yeah.
the westerns as a theme and how westerns were told is really applied into the science fiction in Star Trek heavily. There's always a bar, right? There's almost always a bar somewhere, right?
That's true. They always go and find somebody at a bar, at a
Right.
cantina. That's where you'll find the guy you're looking for.
Yeah. I mean, almost always. It's like we've seen it on Discovery when Burnham was looking for people. They would be at these, these bars. You've
We just
seen
saw
it
it in
on.
Section 31.
We just saw it in Section 31
Yeah.
just now, and we saw it in the Picard season 3 when when Worf makes his reappearance in the bar scene, and all that. It's always
Right.
walking into a bar.
And Picard season 1, I think episode 7, Free Cloud, when they went to Quarks.
Yes, yes, and
You're right, it's everywhere.
and it's really borrowed from the westerns, in which you would see the cowboy roll into town, walk into the bar, and and there begins the story. The story somehow is attached to the experience of meeting people in that bar, shaking somebody down, a fight, whatever. It advances the storyline, and I think Star Trek does a great job of doing it in its own way. Riker in this particular episode made me realize that in more ways than I've ever before, because there was some kind of a John Wayne kind of tough guy about him, like, why don't you use your sleeves, buddy?
That was so lame. I was like, Riker, man, that's the best move you can pull out. That's the best verbal fight you can. That was weak.
Yeah, it was weak sauce, but still, that was what I was thinking about. I enjoyed some of that a little bit. I did like the interplay with the piano player.
Amory. Her name is. Oh, by the way, that character's name is Amory. So That is our
Oh,
friend Anne Marie's favorite character because she says it's the closest one to my name. So she
oh my
loves that
gosh.
character because it's very similar to Anne Marie.
How do you spell that? Is it Amory?
Amory.
A- Amory. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. It should be hand marine,
Yeah.
but okay.
Yeah. I'm not touching that one. But yeah, that's true. And our friend Anne Marie plays the piano too, so that's cool. Anyway, that was a fun character. I wanted to ask you about this though.
Yeah.
That character Amory, I noticed her entire everything was ADR, but Riker's was not because I was like maybe they're in a noisy place, maybe that's why they're doing ADR. But when he was talking to her, it was really his lines, which tells me that maybe they just dubbed over her voice. Maybe they didn't, they just had an actress do the physicality and then somebody else do the voice, or maybe she lost her voice. Sometimes that happens where somebody has like a hoarse voice that day, so then they come back a few days later and do like ADR or something. I don't know did you notice that? Did you have any theories about that? Because it always puzzles me when somebody's entire everything, all of her lines are ADR recorded after.
There could be several reasons for that. One of them could be the placement of the microphone on her wardrobe. It was a very
Oh,
elaborate,
yeah.
heavy wardrobe, and they probably put a wireless mic somewhere on her. And with jewelry and all kinds of things, it's possible that there's sound disruption. The
Like
other
some
possibility,
clinging of her, like things are clanking on it. Yeah.
yes, that's a possibility. The other possibility is because her hands are moving across this piano keyboard, perhaps maybe the sounds of her playing these keyboard um, just added a level of sound disruptance that they weren't comfortable with in post. It could be so many different reasons. So
Right.
it's like you said, somebody's voice being out. I mean, there's so many reasons. Um, but usually you could tell by the shot. So were her hands visible in that shot? Were they not? Where was it on her close-ups? Was it in all of it? Like, so when you start to puzzle, dissect all of those things, which I wasn't looking for, I didn't really pay
I was
attention to
obsessed with it. I was
it.
distracted by it.
I was more distracted by that other set of hands that came out, and I was like, it didn't seem to even match the other set of hands. I was like, you got to get at least a matching
You're
set of
100%
hands.
right because those hands were Jerry Zimmer's. Jerry Zimmer, I see in the credits, says Amory's second pair of arms. So it was a dude. It was a
It
dude
was a
behind.
dude. It was clearly a dude's hands. I was like, what's going on here with this, with these double hands? And at least get some
Hilarious.
hands that have some kind of matching. I thought they would cast a stunt double for the hands, but that wasn't even done. So it was kind of
Oh,
crazy to me.
nope.
At
I
least it
found it.
wasn't like
I,
it
I
could have been some black hands, and you'd have been like, "Whoa,
yeah.
this needs more explanation right here. Where'd you get these two black hands from?"
No, I found it. Here it is. I was looking at the credits and I found what I was looking for. You have Harriet C. Leader, who played Amory, but down in the uncredited section, Judy M. Durand played Amory's voice. So it's just a completely different actor doing the
Okay.
voice. And I don't know why,
Well then,
when that
well,
happens, a lot of times it's
yeah,
because afterwards they don't like what they heard. They go, that just
yeah.
didn't work. We need a different. That happened like, I think in season 4, someone was telling us that someone was being like a Cardassian or something like that. I think it was maybe Ira. And the guy had like this thick Brooklyn accent. And they're like, that's what it was. It was on Deep Space Nine, Homefront and Paradise Lost, the Grazerite president. They said the actor was really good, but I think it was Ira that told us this, but he had this thick Brooklyn accent and it just didn't work. So they had to redo all of his lines with a different actor. But anyway, so I wonder if that was the case, if it just afterwards they're like, okay, something wasn't working.
Yeah, no, I know the feeling. Jeffrey Combs redid all of my lines when we were doing DS9, so it sounds like me, but it's really Jeffrey Combs. That's how good he is. Uh, but no, I didn't pay attention to it. But
Mm.
sometimes they're looking for a certain sound, especially from a character like that. to have a certain tone, maybe of sultry, of a deeper voice, something more intimidating. Who knows what the reason is why they felt they needed a different sound in that moment.
Hmm.
Um, it was a little cheesy though. I don't know. There was like that part of it was more cheesy to me than the A story, which is the whole Romulan diplomacy and
Yeah.
Senator Parnak and all of these things. I thought that was better written as far as believability factor for me. The whole like grabbing a Ferengi by his collar and saying, "You better," and it's like, all right, that's how the A Team was written back in those days, where it's like you
Nice.
get stuff done like that.
You
But to
rough
me,
people
more,
up. You
yeah, you rough
intimidate.
people up.
You intimidate the truth out of him. I'll take care of this. I'll fix his
Yeah,
wagon.
yeah, and that's like that's old school ways of talking and trying to like and bully somebody into telling them getting your way. I like the more diplomacy way about things. I like the clever, articulate ways of getting your point across. And I think that's why I think the A storyline, when you talk about Spock saying, well, if their strategy is to do this, then I'm going to play along in their strategy so I can see what they're trying to do. Like that's a gamesmanship logical way that I expect to see out of Star Trek storytelling, where they explain it in a way that makes sense. I liked Spock's rationale for coming to certain conclusions on things. You could see that he clearly wasn't even really trustful. He was like, "Are you sure you want to?" Like when he had that meeting with the pro council guy, Spock was like, "This doesn't make sense. Like you should be taking a different position in the seat that you're sitting in with the amount of you know pressure you have on either side of the aisle to kind of find a way to go. You're acting as if there's going to be no resistance," and that was suspicious to him. And I think that made sense to me as of just listening to the guy too. I was like, wait a minute, don't aren't there people that are going to resist this? Like what about them? And his answer was like, well, they're not going to be leaders anymore. Basically, we're going to exterminate people or get rid of people who disagree with us. And that's not the path that Spock was thinking about, which is convincing people, right? Let's articulate our position. Let's convince people that this is the right way forward for our society. Not let's bully people and basically remove all opposition by having kind of a civil war event. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Um, I think that shows the kind of gamesmanship and diplomacy that is good writing.
Yeah, and oftentimes I find myself slightly disinterested in the politics of other aliens. Sometimes it's really interesting, and other times it's less. Like sometimes I find it a little hard to care about Klingon politics and the High Council and stuff like that. Um, but this is more interesting to me because it's about reunification. It's about the cousin races that splintered off thousands of years ago, and now they're like, imagine how powerful we could be, or how enlightened we could be, or how unified we could be if we came back together. And that's really interesting, and it's really cool. And again, we can kind of draw those parallels throughout our history, but I found it to be a lot more interesting. Sela kind of pops up out of nowhere, which is cool. She's still alive. We know that she's still alive somewhere. She didn't die, so she's still around.
Yeah.
Spock's story, which was really cool, we know now what happens to Spock. He doesn't say, okay, well, I'm going to go back home. See you guys later. It's like we know at any point where Spock, he's probably on Romulus. He's probably trying to enlighten people. And I actually, this is an episode I remember well, or a two-parter I remember well. When I was a kid, I had the VHS tape of this, and it was two tapes, and it was like a little box set of tapes, like two VHS tapes that were like connected by a little book thing, And I don't
Yeah.
remember how it cost. I remember those VHS tapes for one episode was $19.99 for one episode. So you spent a lot of money buying Star Trek episodes, let me tell you. But this was one I did have. And so it was one I watched because it had Spock, because it had Denise Crosby coming back.
Yeah.
It had a lot of, it was a big deal to me. You know, I thought it was big. Did it hit you that way? Did it hit you like, this is kind of a cornerstone of TNG season 5 because it's a 2-parter. It's pretty big.
Actually made me think why they didn't bring this as like a season opener type of thing. This seems like a season finale, season opener type of episode.
Totally.
I had to look down and say, this is episode 7 and 8.
Yeah, I know.
Like it's a weird placement for you bring Spock in, you know. And we talked about it on the last review with Adam Nimoy. You know, the cachet that his father brings to this franchise is unmeasurable. He is a legitimate superstar of a character in the world, and just all of the world. You know, and it doesn't matter what genre you're talking about. The idea of Spock exists, and he brought it to life in a very real way. And it's something that people resonate with because it uses something that we all tend to want to have, which is logic and reason. And, you know, we try to govern ourselves with that using less emotion, I think, is, you know, a sign of self-control. And I think it was a great thing to see Data and Spock together. I love that scene where Spock tells Data, like, essentially, you know, your design, the way you are designed is what Vulcans strive to have, which is basically this emotionless, logical approach to the world. And I love the conversation they had of, well, Data's trying to be more human, you know, Spock's trying to be more like Data. It was a very beautiful exchange between the two of them. And again, credit to Michael Piller for writing that kind of stuff into Star Trek. That's the kind of stuff I look for. Those are the nuggets. Those are the conversations that makes this show special. You know, two people from two different backgrounds, two different worlds, one half human Vulcan talking to an android, but the conversation between them is as human as all of us have in our own lives, right? And that's the beauty of Star Trek. We're watching an android talk to a Vulcan and finding our own truth in that conversation. And that's when Star Trek really reaches its height of storytelling. That's what Michael Piller nailed down in a lot of these scenes between Picard and Spock and Data and Spock, Picard and Spock having the conversation of, you know, having the father, Sarek, being their mutual kind of connection. And that conversation opening the door to them having an understanding of each other. That's another human experience, right? It's like, you know, my father, or you know, my brother, and because you knew him so well, there must be something about you that I can learn about and understand, and I can see something in you that he saw in you, and therefore we can all find ways to connect. I think that's what makes Star Trek beautiful.
Yeah, I think that in the Star Trek universe, the big part of this 2-parter was the unification, reunification, all the political things. In the real world, I think that the biggest aspect of this, besides obviously just Leonard Nimoy coming back to Star Trek, was the scenes with Spock and Data. I think that was something that they looked at ahead of time as the golden nugget that they were going to write. And actually, we got to take a quick break. So we'll talk about that more because I got more I want to talk about with that. I think you hit the nail on the head there. We'll be right back on The Seventh Rule.